What's up guys, I'm Newbie Dave and welcome to the Weekend Update. Let's get started. How's it going? Hope you all had a great week. I am really excited about these weekend updates. It gives me a chance to get in a lot more content than I was otherwise able to do. Some of it pretty small or minor things that don't really warrant their own full episode. Now, before we get started, I need to change outfits. I'm a little bit overdressed here for the weekend. That's better. Okay, now today we are going to work on something that I've wanted to do since we built these farms over here. Just haven't really found the time or the reason to do so. Now these farms are working great, but there's something that we can do to make them work even better, and that's adding some bees. Now bees can be found naturally in the world in the following biomes with the following percentages. Now unfortunately I am not in one of those biomes. I think I'm in one of the forest biomes that has like a 0.2% chance, but that's not really great. So if I just ran around looking for a bee nest, then I don't have very good odds of finding one. However, any birch or oak sapling that grows within 2 blocks of a flower has a 5% chance of spawning with a bee nest with 1 to 3 bees in it. So what we're going to do is actually plant some flowers over here by my birch forest, where I grow my birch trees that I use for anytime I need more birch wood. I come and just cut down one of these trees and replant a sapling. So we're going to plant some flowers by these birch trees and then cut them all down and replant some new saplings. And I'll use some bone meal. I've got a lot of bones I've collected from all the skeletons that I've killed. Holy cow, that's a lot of bone meal. So we'll use some bone meal on the saplings and see if we can't artificially generate a bee nest. That'll be a whole lot easier than going around looking for one. If we don't find one, then I'll just have to press my luck and go exploring. Let me start by cutting all these trees down. And then I'll plant some saplings. I'll go ahead and cut them all down first and give the saplings a chance to grow on their own. That might save me a little bit of bone meal. Now I started off with about 26 or 27 saplings with a 5% chance. That means you have about a 1 in 20 chance of spawning a bee nest. So hopefully the odds are in my favor that one of these, before I run out of saplings, should produce a bee nest, but we'll see. Let's go ahead and start bone mealing these and see what we get. Alright, nothing yet, so I'm going to go ahead and cut these down and plant some more saplings. So let's try this again. Hey, look at that! Alright, that didn't take nearly as long as I thought it might. So that was a whole lot easier in my opinion than running around trying to find a bee nest and then trying to use a lead to bring the bees back to my base. Alright, so now that we got our bee nest to spawn, let's talk about how to get the bees back to our base, because we don't want the bees over here, we want them in our crop field. So in order to get the bees back to your base, you're going to need leads. You're going to use the lead on the bee just like you would on a cow or a sheep or anything, and then it will follow you. You can speed things along by also using flowers. Flowers are what you can use to breed bees, and so if you hold a flower, they will be attracted to it and they'll follow you. Using both a lead and a flower will just make things go even faster. Now once we get the bees back to our base, we're going to need somewhere for them to live. We don't want them coming back to this bee nest, although in my experience the bees that live in the nest that you take them from tend to try to get back to their nest even if it's really far away. So these bees are probably going to be bound to this nest no matter what we do. But regardless, we're going to need a new place for them to live. In order to do that, we're going to need to craft a beehive, and to craft a beehive we're going to need honey. Now we can get the honey from the bee nest using shears, but if we do this, it's going to really upset the bees, any bees that are inside the bee nest, and they will try to attack us. And if a bee stings you, then it dies, and we don't want that to happen. So to avoid that, we need to put a campfire underneath the nest. And so anywhere within 5 blocks underneath the nest, and the smoke will calm the bees down so it doesn't aggravate them. Now because this is a new bee nest, it doesn't actually have any honey yet, so we do need to wait for a little bit for the bees to produce honey. Okay, so this bee nest now has honey in it. You can tell because the texture has changed on the outside, and it's a little bit hard to see with the campfire smoke underneath it, but it's actually dripping honey, and you can kind of hear the drips. So now we can harvest it by using shears on the bee nest, and it will drop 3 honeycomb, which that's nice. It went up on top of the tree. Okay, so these 3 honeycomb are going to allow us to craft a beehive. Now we just need to get the bees, which both of them just went into the bee nest. That's awesome. So now I just need to wait for them to come out. All right, there's one. And there's the other one. Okay, so I've got them both on leads. I'm going to use this flower to make sure that they follow me. And you want to be careful with bees around water because bees will take damage if they come into contact with water. So I try to clear myself a little bit of path around those trees. And I'll just kind of take it slowly to make sure that they don't pop off the leads from getting too far away. Okay, for now I'm just going to tie them up to this fence post here so they don't go flying off back to their nest. Let's talk about building a beehive. So a beehive is pretty easy to craft. You just need 3 honeycomb and then 6 of any type of plank like this, and you will get a beehive. Beehive works the exact same as a bee nest. It's just a different texture and it doesn't generate randomly. Now we want this to be in our crop field somewhere so that the bees end up flying over the crops to get to flowers. So I think I'm going to sacrifice one of my blocks in the wheat field here, and I'm going to put down an oak plank right there. On top of this, I'm going to put a campfire because, again, we don't want to harvest the honey from a beehive or a bee nest without a campfire under it, or else it will aggravate the bees. And then I will put the beehive on top of that. And I actually want it to face that way. There we go. So that little slot in the front is the front of the beehive, and so I want it facing that way. I tore up a little bit of my crops doing that. Okay, and then to make this look a little bit nicer, I'm going to put spruce trapdoors around the campfire so that you never actually see it. Okay, now these bees, they may or may not claim this as their home. Since we're still pretty close to their original nest, they may just end up flying back there. But if we get them to breed, then their baby should claim this beehive as its home, and it will just stay here forever. And so once we get 2 baby bees out of these guys, then we can just let them go. If they stay here, great. If not, then we've got our own bees here to reproduce. Now, in order to get the bees to work, we need to plant some flowers outside of our crop farm. And I'm going to do this on both sides. That way the bees will go both directions over the crops. Let me get rid of this cactus because I don't want the bees to accidentally hit the cactus and take damage. That would be really bad. And there we go, baby number 2. So we now have 2 baby bees. So we can go ahead and let these guys off their leash. Again, they may end up staying here and claiming this beehive since it's so close. In my experience, they tend to try to get back to their original bee nest, or they'll just kind of wander off. But these 2 babies, we should be good with them. Now I'm going to go ahead and feed these guys some flowers. I've got plenty of poppies because of all the iron golems. They always drop poppies from the iron farm. So by feeding these guys some flowers, you can actually accelerate their growth and turn them into adults a lot faster. There we go, and we'll go ahead and breed them up too. And we'll just get a ton of little baby bees going. Alright, so why do we want these bees around our crops? Well, the bees are going to fly over to any nearby flower and spend some time pollinating the flower. And once they do that, they will actually be covered in pollen, and you'll start to see the pollen drip off the bee's body. And once they have pollen on them, they will return, okay, so like that. So these bees now have pollen on them, and they will fly back to their beehive. And as they do that, the pollen that drips off them, any crops that it lands on, it's kind of like a bone meal effect. It accelerates the growth of the crops. So by having a beehive in the middle of our crops and having flowers outside of our crops, it'll cause the bees to fly back and forth over our crops, pollinating them, and they'll grow much, much faster. Now this isn't really necessary because we've got a huge field and it grows pretty fast anyways, but it's a nice little feature of the game that we might as well take advantage of. And also we will get free honey out of it, so that's nice. So I may have been wrong about that whole bees taking damage from water business, because this dude was just soaking in the river here and I didn't see him taking any damage. So yeah, maybe I was wrong about that. So each bee that returns to the beehive with pollen will increase the honey level of the beehive by 1. And once it reaches honey level 5, then you can harvest the honey the same way you do from the bee nest, by just using the shears on it. Since we've got the permanent campfire under the beehive, we never have to worry about aggravating the bees. So I'm going to go ahead and craft a second beehive. And I'm going to place this one up here on the upper crop field, just like that. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and breed a couple more bees. I think you can only have up to 3 bees in one beehive at a time. Possibly more than that can claim the beehive as their home, but I think there can only be 3 in there at a time. Maybe even only 2. So by having more beehives, we give them more options to pollinate. Alright, that's going to wrap things up for today. Hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you learned something about Minecraft bees, and maybe you can use this in your own build to speed up the growth of your crops. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying this series, please like this episode, and please subscribe so that you can get notified of future episodes as they come out. Thanks y'all, and have a great day.